Okay, good evening or morning or afternoon to everyone. So we present ourselves. We are Giulietta, Birgit, Camila, and I, Clara. We are four architects that we did the NAT master on Neuroscience Applied to Architectural Design in Venice. That was in the years 2021-22. And we presented our thesis on October 2022. And we are very glad to share it here in this group that I think we are all interested in how the built environment affects people. And yeah, we will present, and then as Marta said, all comments and questions are welcome, so we can see and figure out if this thesis helps to continue to be continued. So this is a presentation we made for the Biennale last May. We had the chance to present it there, and that was we were very happy for that. So we will use the same presentation. And so it will be a short summary, and the thesis is called The Path, How to Foster Children's and Adolescents' Emotional Well-being Through Architecture. So we will start with some background information on the topic, then explain our concept and design implementations, further finish with some conclusions, and further steps that we are planning to take.
Can you see
next one, please?
Yes,
we see it.
Does it work? Okay.
Yes, it works.
Can you go to the next slide, please?
I actually did. Okay, something's weird.
Yes. Now
Okay.
it's
Can
on
you
there.
see me switching?
Yeah.
Sí.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So what's the current situation? This slide is explaining why did we concentrate on children and adolescents' emotional well-being. Here you can see some rather devastating numbers from the UNICEF 2021 Children's Report. And well, you will see, for instance, 30% of age 10-19 live with diagnostic mental disorder. There's also 40% related to anxiety and depression. Every 11 minutes, one adolescent commits suicide. So this is just probably the big numbers, but as we all know, there's this big problem of mental health. And these numbers have risen significantly worldwide in all pathologies and disorders. And now I think we are all aware that we face a real problem, especially with young generations that can drag mental health disorders into adulthood. Especially with the pandemic, with the COVID-19, this raised huge concerns for mental health of the entire generation.
Están centrando el tema en la salud mental de adolescentes, que es lo que veíamos en la slide anterior, sobre como un 40%
los números sí,
afectados
los números
por
devastadores.
Ansiedad y depresión o otros desórdenes mentales.
So what are our research topics and research methods? So to develop the project, we have based our research in three main topics: the neurobiology of stress, the world of affect, especially feelings and emotions, awareness and empathy, and neuroscientific research on space and navigation. So we did all these research topics, very profound research. And then to gather the information, we reviewed the existing literature concerning those topics, but also conducted interviews with professionals such as doctors, psychotherapists, psychologists specialized in children. For instance, for the ones that know the hospital in Sant Joan de Déu, the pediatric hospital in Barcelona, We did some interviews there, and from also in Vienna and France. So lots of interviews that were very gained a lot of valuable information. And furthermore, I created online questionnaires also for children and adolescents, including drawings of a real and dream hospital. You will see it later. So there were some small children and not so small children that gave us some very valuable information as well. So based on this information, we developed a concept called simply the House of Children and Adolescents, which is a house that promotes good mental health for every child and adolescent in their community. So there is the hospital where maybe they can be treated, but then there is this house. It's a community house where they can, this house that embrace children and adolescents. And what do we have in this slide? We want to explain the what, for whom, when, where, and why. So what is this house? This is a new place for mental health of children and adolescents, a place to find psychological support and balance. And for whom? It is for any child or adolescent facing challenging, stressful situations, adverse life experiences, or needs a space which accompanies a therapy. Where this is in the community, local and decentralized. And why? So as we said, early intervention to prevent the development of worsening of mental health challenges and to give tools for stress reduction, and in the end, to promote a more resilient society. And when, this is some ideas or some thoughts. For instance, when you feel lost, when you are struggling, when you feel angry, when you feel sad, when you feel afraid, when you feel alone. So, Vladimir es un poco el resumen, ¿no? de dónde sale un poco la idea de la casa, le llamamos la casa, the house, que es una casa en la comunidad, paralela a lo que sería tratamiento hospitalario. Y bueno, un poco para poder crear este entorno de recuperación para niños, niñas y adolescentes de su salud mental.
¿Puedo interrumpir un poquito? ¿Esto
Yes.
aplicaría como un centro de asistencia social donde, por ejemplo, donde están los niños que retiran de sus padres por violencia?
No. This is only a house where you can get support.
Okay.
Psychological support. It's actually little kids should go there with their parents. There is more or less around 12 where we know there's a difference where kids go with their parents or when kids don't go they can go by their own. But it's just to give psychological support and that you find your own way to go back to homeostasis in the case you have lost the balance.
Or any caregiver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would explain a little bit of the theoretical background, sort of the neurobiology, the evidence behind the concept of emotional well-being. And for this, we like to use this citation, which is the experience of positive emotions, feelings, and affect are fundamental building blocks for cultivating resilience, flourishing, vitality, happiness, and life satisfaction, which ultimately contribute to physical and emotional well-being. And when we experience positive emotions, also among other things, we modulate neurophysiological correlates within the central and peripheral nervous systems. And this cumulative effect of this whole experience and the interpretation and also the regulation of those positive stimuli and emotions can lead to the experience of well-being. So this is sort of the theory of positive emotions behind it. And we created this sort of a path to well-being, which we called it, which, as Clara just said, is addressed to children and adolescents that are sort of outside their windows of tolerance and need to go back to a state of balance and well-being. So what we are trying to do here is to reinforce this perception of well-being that is linked to a sequence of spaces that is designed to trigger this positive this positive emotional experience, which we will explain further. And to achieve this, we want to use the repetition of positive emotional experiences in between, foster self-awareness capabilities that are focused on the perception of well-being and on the perception of the emotion before. So we attempt to trigger these specific emotions. We hypothesize in this way to improve the emotional regulation processes through this, through sort of enhancing interoceptive awareness, emotional recognition, and emotional awareness interpretations. And we will explain how we want that to work.
Birgit,
But
do you
here,
back one slide? I'm just going to quickly translate to Spanish.
yes. Oh, sure.
Thank
I'll
you.
try. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, okay.
Básicamente, lo que Birgit nos está diciendo es que si el objetivo del proyecto era diseñar esta casa del bienestar, la teoría del bienestar emocional en la que se basan se trata de reforzar las experiencias emocionales positivas y la self-awareness, que es la autoconsciencia. Entonces, que el objetivo de este espacio será la creación de experiencias emocionales positivas repetidas y promover esta autorreflexión para desarrollar en el tiempo el estado del bienestar y ayudar a la autorregulación emocional y del sistema nervioso de estas personas que con estrés y ansiedad llegan fuera de su ventana de tolerancia, que es como llamamos cuando hemos salido del estado que podemos manejar el estrés fácilmente dentro de nosotros.
Okay. So here you can see our sort of conceptual framework. So this is the skeleton of our design. And we use this from classical storytelling, actually. It's based on the dramatic arc that you probably all know from any sort of storytelling, from movies, from books, TV, anything. So we want to introduce this to sort of give a structure to our house, to our space. So here you can see a time scale and attention scale. And it begins with the exposition, the beginning, where we want to incorporate a very safe and familiar setting, a very warm, welcoming beginning stage, and then have, like in a movie, there's sort of a plot point in movies where there is a insight or an incident which creates unfamiliarity, but also a sort of mystery and curiosity. And this is also what we want to do. And then there is a growing level of emotional arousal on a positive way, leading to sort of the highest point, the climax, and then again reducing the positive emotional arousal, leading to a resolution stage in the end that should feel rewarding, whereas we said the children and adolescents should find more balance and return home changed. So this is the whole process that the children should go through in the space. And we have these 3 stages, the exposition, as I said, and in between the main plot, which is sort of the heart of the project, the path, and in the end, the resolution. So in this path, you can also, depending on the local context or the cultural background, the demographic background, or the local spatial availabilities, you can also add different subplots, which we will go into in a second. But here you can see how the main plot, the path, is built up. So you have stimuli, and in between no or reduced stimuli, which means that we have the specific spaces that are meant to induce positive emotions. Then you have this awareness stage, or pause space, as we call it, where you are reflecting on the just experienced emotion. And you have the growing emotion, and again, try to reflect. So this is how we want to improve emotional recognition, and therefore also emotional regulation abilities. Okay,
So
now Cami would go more into detail on that.
thank you. Maybe Marta, do you want to translate this into Spanish?
Sure, or
Oh,
Camila,
sure.
you want to translate just this process, this beautiful process?
Oh, ok, mira, lo que Birgit ha estado explicando ahorita es que nos estamos basando en una narrativa que lo podemos encontrar normalmente en muchos tipos de historias que vemos en la vida diaria, ¿no? En las películas, en los libros, y comienza con tres etapas, son tres etapas, mejor dicho. Una es la exposición, en donde estamos en un espacio familiar, que nos sentimos seguros. Luego nos vamos a la etapa del medio, que es el main plot, digamos, y allí vamos a encontrar muchas transiciones, muchos tipos de activaciones de emociones, y luego nos vamos a ir a la parte final, que es la resolución, en donde vamos a encontrar algún tipo de recompensa, ¿no? En este caso, esa recompensa es la introspección y poder entendernos un poquito más y encontrar este balance interno. Además, Birgit también nos ha hablado sobre cómo el main plot está dividido, ¿no? En estas distintas experiencias, en este caso el 1, el 2 y el 3, pero también puede venir acompañado de subplots. En castellano se vendría a ser subtemas, ¿no?
Como argumentos internos.
Perfecto, perfecto, tal cual. Y que una cosa importante de entender también es que en la transición de pasar de un espacio a otro, tenemos que encontrar, o podemos encontrar, mejor dicho, espacios de pausa. Espacios en donde luego de tener la experiencia de aquella emoción en cuestión, podemos pausar y reflexionar sobre aquella. Entonces, eso vendría a ser. Okay, so I will continue in English right now. Just to continue, the main conceptual framework that we are using for our house, it is also arranged by something that we named the minimum amount of emotion-inducing spaces needed. So for our hypothesis to work in any given community, this minimum amount of spaces, of emotion-inducing spaces, can be grouped into what we call a minimum cluster aggregation, which is what you see at the left side. And the possibilities of integrating subplots mentioned before by Birgit will be addressed as the secondary cluster aggregations. So these may begin to be inserted in communities that, for example, have already fulfilled their primary basic needs, so that they can start adding new experiences. And the selected emotions to be included along the path, which is the main plot, as Birgit explained, can change depending on the context, necessities, and characteristics of the population to be addressed. The order of the sequence, for example, may be tailor-made by guiding therapists depending on the unique characteristics of each child, of each adolescent. Or with the help, for example, maybe something we could explore of digital tools that track emotions, etc. So there's a lot of things that can help us. And for the House of Children and Adolescents, we have chosen, for this specific case that we are addressing right now in this presentation, we have chosen to induce 4 types of emotions, of positive emotions, and a particular space sequence of navigation. This will be pleasure, joy, compassion, and relaxation. So B, if you could please, exactly. So now we will translate these concepts, this background into something more tangible in architecture. So we will translate our narrative first into a navigational schema. And we've chosen the spiral based on a metaphor that represents how we want to navigate towards the center of the self through awareness. And here you will see that the 3 mentioned sections or acts that Birgit explained, that's the exposition and the main plot and the resolution, unfold. If we could go to the next, that one, thank you. Here we will insert the emotions, the emotion-inducing spaces in a particular space-time of the plot. Here you can see we have pleasure, we have joy, we have compassion and relaxation. And then further along, I will explain why this is a sequence. No? And they will be arranged in these specific sequence of levels of arousal to expose the child to a chain of emotional experiences that induce different states of activation, no? Allowing them to understand the physiological differences between them. And this is why the pause space is so important to be introduced in between them. So finally, I think if we go to the next slide, we can see there. Yes, there it is. Finally, we add the accompanying extra minimum aggregation clusters, which, for example, you can see at the beginning in the blue part, which is the magic breath. This is the metaphor for the entrance hall, for example, or you can find the office of the psychologist or the assistance that you need to guiding you through this path. That bridge you from your daily routines into this specific space and time moment. And for example, also the secret garden, as we called it, which is a space where we can reflect about all of what you have experienced of all the sequence. And then the secondary aggregation clusters, as we mentioned before, when the communities have already fulfilled the primary needs, these clusters can be, for example, a kitchen, a place where everyone can gather and talk about things as in a very small community, or a space where you can have workshops about it. So it will depend on the communities. Although the spiral follows a linear sequence, if you can go back, please, B, just for a second. Although it follows a linear sequence, this guidance could be further customized to fit the specific user's need by breaking the linear sequence that a spiral usually has at different points of the navigation to promote independent mobility with a radial approach, for example, that promotes the sense of security and intimacy in the center, and then the sense of freedom and liberty for action, which is independent mobility, for example, on the periphery.
Voy a traducir.
And now we can go to...
Sí.
Okay.
¿Puedes pasar? Sí. Lo que he entendido es que como esto es un patrón que puede ser replicable, hay los elementos mínimos del clúster, que en este caso, o sea que en cada caso pueden ser diferentes dependiendo de la comunidad y del adolescente o del niño en concreto, pero que ellas para este ejemplo han trabajado con 4 emociones principales que forman parte de este recorrido en espiral, que es la amarilla, placer, la naranja, alegría, la verde, compasión y la azul, relajación. Y lo que vemos en esta imagen son como los elementos de segundo orden, que es lo que le llaman secondary cluster aggregation, que también pueden pueden cambiar dependiendo de la comunidad y podrían ser esos espacios de encuentro, un espacio de cocina, un espacio de conexión, y que supongo que nos enseñaron un ejemplo concreto, pero dentro del esquema es algo que puede variar dependiendo de cada caso. ¿Me he dejado algo, Camila?
Sí, correcto, está perfecto. Solamente entender también el tema de... Sí,
Clarísimo.
La otra cosa, el único punto nada más es entender que no necesariamente es una navegación, ¿no? Una secuencia lineal, que dependiendo del usuario, dependiendo del niño o del adolescente en cuestión, esta secuencia puede interrumpirse y que puede generarse, por ejemplo, de una forma radial, en donde en el centro encuentras un poquito más de intimidad, ¿no? Y hacia la periferia puedes encontrar un poquito más de independencia para accionar, ¿no? De movilidad. Y eso también es parte del proceso guiado interdisciplinario, ¿no? Que pueda suceder en este espacio. Okay, so now I'll go to the last slide that I'm going to talk about. So just introduce the architectonic part. And we will soon zoom in later into each of the selected emotions. So first, let's state that all of the selected emotions have to be placed on the positive side of the balance scale, each representing a different arousal variability. So resulting in emotions with a domain of pleasantness and not extreme activation in order to stay inside of the window of tolerance that Birgit was talking about before. So in this particular project, for example, in this particular house, our order represents a sequence specifically designed to induce activation that ranges from the mid-activation, which is pleasure, high activation, which is joy. Then you follow to a neutral activation that is compassion, and then you go to a lower activation that is relaxation. So this is the sequence that we have chosen. And Julie will take a look at these spaces closely. Te lo digo en castellano rapidito. Simplemente para decir que en este particular caso, primero que nada, que es importante saber que las emociones, como ya se ha dicho, tienen que ser positivas y tienen que estar ubicadas en el lado positivo de la escala de Valencia, Marta. ¿Valencia vendría a ser?
Balance. ¿Cómo se dice? El balance.
De Valencia,
Oddio.
¿no? Valencia positiva versus...
Valencia, exacto. Entonces, esto al final termina en un estado de emociones que están en el dominio entre el pleasantness, que es lo agradable, y no de activación extrema, ¿no? En este caso, la secuencia que hemos elegido va en el siguiente orden. Primero de media a alta valencia, que vendría a ser el placer. Luego una activación un poco más alta, que es la alegría. Luego bajamos a una neutra, que es la compasión. Y luego vamos a una más baja, donde viene a ser la relajación. Y ahora Julie nos va a explicar un poco sobre cómo trasladamos esto a la arquitectura espacial.
Okay. So, do you hear me? I don't know if I'm perfect. First of all, obviously, the translation into architectural forms was the most complicated part of the project, because when we are in the theoretical part, we have everything clear, and then we have to translate it into forms, and it's quite complicated. But what we tried to do was to use evidence, the evidence that we had gained through the first part of research, to really design. So every single choice that we made into the composition design process, we try to make it on the basis of studies and researches that we had recollected in the first part. And well, let's talk about the cluster of pleasure, the space for pleasure. What we propose is a space where it is possible to create your own space in order to promote self-agency and awareness of current special needs. Because if you satisfy those needs and you feel comfortable in a space, actually a sense of pleasure is induced in you. And this space specifically is composed of a light modular, as you see, an adaptable structure in which some small subspaces can be created by the use of curtains and the variation of heights and some niches and platforms. And among all the different tools that we have used, we think that the most important to mention are the high flexibility that allows the individual regulation of privacy or social contact, the variety of affordances according to individual bodily abilities and exploratory routes, and the use of the prospect and refugee theory to offer the possibility to have hideouts and viewpoints to the kids. Maybe we can go to the following one, Birgit.
Okay.
Okay, this is sorry.
I'll just translate quickly about pleasure.
Sí.
Están tratando de crear el espacio para esta primera emoción, que es el placer, y se han centrado en ofrecer mucha flexibilidad, muchas affordances, que como sabéis significan las posibilidades de interacción y posibilidades de uso, porque cuando hay autonomía, es decir, el niño y el adolescente puede satisfacer sus necesidades espaciales yendo a buscar el espacio que mejor satisface sus necesidades del momento, un sentido de estar a gusto y de placer va a seguir a la posibilidad de autonomía en encontrar el espacio que mejor se adecua a las necesidades de ese momento, ¿no?
Eso, exactamente. Lo que decía antes, que hemos tratado en la traducción en formas de arquitectónicas, hemos tratado de tomar no sé, se llama evidencia científica, no sé, yo soy italiana, entonces bueno, mi español es un poco,
Genial,
bueno,
gracias.
de basarnos sobre la evidencia científica para cada decisión que tomamos en el proceso de composición. Esto es como
Genial.
introducción. And this is the second space that was the higher in the curve of the climax, and the more activated space, and it was obviously the one for the joy. And what we do in this play, what we thought was to create a medium activating space that enhances the experience of joy through playfulness and experience both individually and collectively. What we propose is a space characterized by a linear geometry in which different topographical levels overlap, creating a game of heights and views under curved rooftop. And as for the main design tools, we can mention the use of the linear geometry to activate the user. And we also use the golden ratio and symmetry compositive methods to preserve a positive level of pleasantness. And again, the variation of affordances to allow a gradual transition from individual play to social interaction, fostering emotional contagion. And as the main affordance, that to me is the more amazing one, because I would like to be there, is the use of the trampoline to foster the mental emotional state through the bodily movement, following the theory of the jumping of joy. And maybe do you want to translate?
Yeah, absolutely. Vale, pues
Okay.
este espacio de la alegría, lo que se han centrado es en el juego, en la idea de jugar personal y colectivamente y el movimiento corporal. Y este espacio, que tiene diferentes plataformas, va subiendo y culmina en un lugar donde se puede saltar para como expresar a través del salto esa alegría. Entonces, además el espacio tiene líneas rectas que activan esta sensación de placer y de alegría. Han usado, me ha parecido muy interesante, el golden ratio. ¿Cómo se diría esto en
El golden ratio, en italiano es la seczione aurea.
La proporción áurea, exacto. Este
Eso es.
techo que se eleva con la luz cenital.
Eso. And then the following one is the compassion one. As we saw, it was the one that we consider as the neutral one, as a level of activation. And in the compassion cluster, the intent is to create a safe space where empathy, self-awareness, and the sharing of experiences will be promoted. And the space has been thought as an hexagonal pavilion, ideally divided in two parts. And in the first one, there's an art exposition, and this you see there where there are all the cylindrical little I don't know how to call them estanterías. I don't know how to say it in English. And then you have the shelves, and then you have the other part, the second part, that is it is structured as an amphitheater when you can go and sit and look to the people who is going through the exposition, the art exposition. And among the design tools that we have used, obviously we have the art exhibits to increase the functional connectivity in the user's brains by triggering emotions and actions. The agora, to promote empathy by watching other people and sharing experiences with seats that sits next to you, and also the use of the same floor level along hallways that provides an approachable entrance without variation of one's activation level.
Okay.
Want to translate?
Puedo traducir. Me he tenido que distraer un momento para conectar el cargador y no perder la llamada. Entonces, como he entendido, el objetivo de este espacio para facilitar la compasión es crear un lugar con esta geometría simétrica en la que hay una zona de visualización y otra zona como de exposición artística. Entonces, la idea de este espacio es exponerse a estas experiencias y compartirlas con los demás para promover la empatía y la compasión. ¿Me he dejado algo?
Sí. Sí, bueno, no te has dejado nada, pero el tema es que lo primero que harías en el espacio es ir entre las obras de artes y luego te vas a sentar en el agora, y cuando te vas a sentar, te asientas en el agora, miras a los otros, ¿cómo se dice? Relación visual va a favorecer ¿cómo se
Sí,
dice?
el
El
sentido de
sentido
empatía.
de compasión,
Empatía.
de empatía, eso es. Y luego tenemos and then we have the last one, that is the relaxation cluster, in which we propose at the end of the curve of activation, as where relaxation is promoted through the enhancement of interoceptive awareness, self-awareness, and engagement with states of flow and restoration. The cluster consists of 3 types of interior and exterior circular spaces, characterized by different dimensions, boundaries, and sensory stimuli conceived for different engagement and all interconnected between them. And among the design tools, we have the curved geometries and the descending pace to induce a low arousal and promote one's activation. Then we have, as you see in the middle, the water source and the decreased rhythm of sound, because in the pond there's a sort of you listen to the sound of how do you say gota in English?
Drops?
Dripping.
Yeah,
Dripping
yeah.
water.
And the sound decreases the cardiac rhythm by synchronicity and contemplation. And then in where you see the green dot, there's the garden, the Zen garden, with olfactory plants and horticultural activities to promote restorative states of flow through biophilic principles.
Rápidamente en castellano, este es el espacio de relajación donde han creado diferentes zonas circulares con diferentes estímulos. Abajo vemos un jardín zen con olores, plantas y una rampa que baja suavemente. En el centro hay este lugar de agua donde se oyen las gotas caer que nos ayudan a relajarnos a través de la contemplación. Y luego hay estos lugares más pequeños para la autoconsciencia y para estar más recogido. Así que a través de estos espacios están promoviendo la relajación en los visitantes. ¿Quieres añadir algo más, Giulietta?
No, es perfecto. La única cosa es que hay una topografía que baja desde la entrada, y esto va a favorecer la desactivación, ¿se dice? De activación, bueno, de activación del user, del cliente, del usuario. Y bueno, y esto es, bueno. And here what we see from a more general point of view are the core values, and that we have defined, well, the main one are obviously the cooperation, as Birgit was mentioning before, because we think that this project should be developed in cooperation with other professionals like psychologists, psychiatrists, pedagogists, and social workers, as well with children and their families. Then the second one is flexibility as for the typology, because these house of children could be inserted in different kind of buildings, and could be the cluster could be aggregated in different shapes also. And then we have the adaptability to the context. The building can be adaptable for different economic, and social, cultural, and environmental context of a given community. And then, as for the conclusions, maybe, do you want to translate, or maybe we can make a short translation, everything together with the conclusions?
Yeah, super short.
Bueno,
Sí. You want to translate yourself?
No, go on, no problem.
No, que de manera muy sucinta, valores esenciales de este proyecto es la cooperación con otros profesionales como psicólogos, por ejemplo, del lugar donde se construyen estos centros de niños y adolescentes, la flexibilidad y los cambios de tipología adaptándolos al contexto, que también es el último punto.
Okay, but to conclude, along the process, what we have realized that the final product of this project will be a toolkit that can provide hypothetical models to foster specific emotions through architecture. And we realized that a virtual model could be built, and psychological reaction could be measured in order to test and further demise. And we also think, and this is the dream, the dream we would love to build a pilot project, first in maybe in virtual reality, and then obviously it's not obvious, but this is right in reality. So this is, I think, everything. That's all.
Así, al punto en el que han llegado es de, ahora que está diseñado este primer prototipo, sería ideal hacer una investigación para ver si realmente influye el sistema nervioso de la manera que ellas, de su hipótesis. Entonces empezarían con un modelo de realidad virtual de estos 4 clústeres, de estas emociones que nos han explicado, y a través de sensores biométricos y de dejar a las personas circular por estos entornos virtuales, captarían cómo esto cambia la fisiología de las personas. Entonces, su deseo ahora mismo es poder realizar esta maqueta virtual y este experimento, y el deseo futuro sería de construirlo pues físicamente.
Eso es.
I think it's important to understand also that this house, this concept is designed for the Western world. Actually, so it is in the Western world, ¿no? Esto es un proyecto que está diseñado teniendo en mente el mundo de Occidente y no de Oriente.
Y también una cosa que han dicho es que la idea es que el producto final de esta experimentación sea como un toolkit, una caja de herramientas para que cada comunidad pueda implementarla en el desarrollo de sus casas para los niños y los adolescentes. Well, thank you so much for presenting us this beautiful thesis. I have a lot of reactions to share. I also want to say, I mean, mainly I want to say that I can see how much work is behind on analyzing the topic and then looking for the evidence and centering on this very clear and replicable idea of the path, and then how much courage and thoughtfulness there is in translating this research and these ideas into a physical form. And I really loved the 4 spaces. I think that I was imagining myself in them, and you can really see the very specific different emotions that they would create. I'm curious also now of the spaces in between these 4 clusters, how they connect, what is the final building looking like, and how do you transition from one to another? Because I thought that it was so thoughtful that in order to support these emotions, there is not only the spaces of arousal, but also the spaces of no stimuli to process. So now I'm really curious how those look like, because I think they're the complement to these ones. But just congratulations, and it's so beautiful and inspiring to see, you know, projects like this developed, because we're talking about these ideas all the time, and it's just so important for everyone to see just some example, some first ideas of how this could look like. And I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate how the values of the project, it's not to build like, you know, a one-off very expensive experience, but to create a system that every community can replicate with the resources, which is, I think, the global adaptable mentality that it's very appropriate right now. So thank you so much.
You know,
Thank you,
Marta,
thank you.
it is really interesting what you just said about the spaces in between. These are the transitional spaces, no? And when we looked about, for example, Elisabetta Canepa's paper on the transition between one space to how you conceive the atmosphere, no? And so this is a point that we have to take a look deeper. Clary and Birgit and you and Julie, right? How are we going to use those transitional spaces so that they don't prime you in the wrong way, but in a positive way, in the way that does not influence the emotion that we're going to target on the next cluster? So thank you for that feedback.
I think it's really interesting because thinking about the presentation of Elisabetta Canepa about how I don't know if you know the paper she's developed a paper in which she's demonstrating that the intermediate spaces can prime your experience of the following space that you enter, and she's focusing on corridors, for example. And I think it's very important because we have never thought about that, but we should take into consideration the fact that these intermediate spaces, how should they look like? I think it's very important that we start thinking about them.
Yeah, I think, as you say, I think they were just more conceptual there, so we know what we want to reach with them. Like, okay, that there's, for example, a therapist sitting together with the child and talk about it, or using, as Cami said, some digital tools, like, I don't know, there's an app called Mood Meter where you can try to define which emotion or to which emotion it was close. But yeah, I think it's a very important next point that we have to address, how this can actually look in a physical way, and how this merges together, or create also an example. We were very focused on the emotional part, so thank you as well for that.
No, y para traducir un poco al castellano, les estaba diciendo que me encantó el proyecto, y mi pregunta era sobre los espacios de transición entre los lugares que nos han enseñado para las 4 emociones, qué es lo que pasaba en medio, porque me parecía muy interesante esta idea que presentaban al principio de manera teórica, que después de estimular había un momento de no estimulación para poder procesar e integrar la experiencia. Y ahora discutían pues que en efecto estos espacios de transición podrían ser algo en lo que se enfoquen próximamente, porque habría que diseñarlos para que fueran realmente ese espacio de pausa y no, digamos, como afectasen a lo que va a pasar después. O sea, que sea un espacio suficientemente neutro que no te dé una emoción que luego reste de la siguiente que vas a experimentar, ¿no?
Que no influya en cómo genera la siguiente.
Puede ser realmente un lugar como de limpieza, o de llegar a un estado más neutro. Me pregunto los demás que estáis aquí, Vladimir, Claudia, Paul, Lisa, Florencia, Agostina, ¿qué reacciones tenéis? ¿Qué pensáis? ¿Qué os ha gustado? ¿Qué feedback podemos dar a este fabuloso equipo?
Yo los felicito mucho porque son pocos los trabajos que materializan ya aplicación de la neuroarquitectura. Yo no conozco muchos y lanzarse a hacer eso me parece que es muy valioso.
Sí, y yo quería comentar, digo, a mí me encantó, está buenísimo el proyecto y sí esto que decían de implementarlo en cualquier parte o que es un proyecto global, sí, yo lo veo, digo, yo estoy en México y creo que se puede implementar muy bien. Y yo lo estaba tratando de imaginar porque nosotros estamos trabajando sobre establecimiento de escuelas naturaleza. Entonces, ¿cómo integrar este camino que ustedes han desarrollado en esto que nosotros ya estamos trabajando? Porque justo esto de las escuelas de naturaleza, más allá de que sea educación ambiental, es justo para tener este bienestar tanto físico como emocional que tenemos de tener este contacto con la naturaleza. Entonces me pareció muy valioso todo lo que presentaron y me gustaría mucho poderlo como, pues no sé, implementar o integrar con esto que ya hemos avanzado, porque hemos estado trabajando con diferentes espacios donde se aprende cada cosa y cómo integrar como esta salud mental en la que ustedes están enfocadas con esto. Pero pues muchas gracias por esta presentación y muchas gracias, Marta, por convocar estos círculos.
No sé si en español o en inglés que prefieren. Yo diría como tres cosas. La primera, felicitarlas por el trabajo y por cómo también lo desarrollaron. Se nota que hay como mucha profundización en el tema y se pudo como, nosotros lo pudimos ver. Después, la segunda, en cuanto a lo bien que hablaron de la salud mental, que sabemos que hay todo un tema detrás de ello y que la arquitectura también, por lo menos la que existe, no acompaña demasiado como toda esta cuestión de poder ayudar a que la persona tenga experiencias mejores. Así que me parece súper destacable. Y la tercera, creo que es muy interesante porque no solo en las cuestiones de salud mental, sino las transiciones son importantes para todos en todo momento. Nosotros cada vez que salimos de nuestra casa o vamos al trabajo o vamos, en el caso con Clara hablamos un montón, a los hospitales, son estructuras que la transición es importante, entonces como de qué manera podemos tomar ese concepto y aplicarlo utilizando otros parámetros. No tienen por qué ser los mismos, pero sería como si la metodología que ellas plantean para empezar a pensar que nosotros somos una transición permanente o que estamos transitando permanentemente espacios y cosas. Sorry, Birgit, then
Yeah,
No,
she was talking about the transition spaces that I think we have talked a lot about, that you cannot enter just right with a door, but how important are all the transitions to just to prepare yourself for what's coming next, and especially if it's a facility where there is some kind of a healthcare facility.
Yeah. I understood a little bit, and as you said something about hospital, I was imagining the different spaces as we had it in our concept to be implemented, for example, in some different parts of the hospital. But especially here, we didn't think that much of, okay, when the child goes out of this space, and I mean, it's exposed to so many influences, like from the typical hospital day, and maybe a lot of stressful influences. So yeah, I think this is really a very, very important point.
Well, congratulations, ladies. I think how good is this for these children to have all of these great proposals from the beginning of their lives. So it's not a renovation, but a new project for them. And yeah, it's so good that they really absorb everything. I think they are always feeling everything that happens around them. It is so typical from adults to say that children don't even realize things because they are children, but it is the opposite way around. They feel it all, they sense everything, and they have barely few words to translate their emotions because they are learning everything still. So it is so beautiful that you think for them and you help them feel these new emotions with this care. And yes, it's brilliant. You're opening frontiers. So very good job.
Thank you.
You know, there's something important that you said, that children just usually don't have the words, the right words to express themselves. And it is important, this transdisciplinary space where they can understand their feelings, no? the bodily feelings, and how can they individually learn to interpret them positively so that they can later in life use them as a tool for resilience. When they face adverse events, they can always come back to this image in their minds and use them as a way to tangibly confront a negative aspect and translate it into a positive one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
No, your microphone is out.
Thank you, Agustina. I was gonna ask Lisa, is there something you want to say?
Sí, bueno, ¿puedo hablar en castellano o necesariamente en inglés? O, bueno,
No,
no tengo...
ya haremos la traducción a Birgit.
Ok. Bueno, en primera instancia, de verdad, muchísimas gracias por compartir el proyecto. La verdad es que cuando veo proyectos materializados acerca del tema de neuroarquitectura, quedo muy impactada porque, claro, la verdad es que en el tema como tal llevo muy poco y la verdad es que lo estoy haciendo sola por mi cuenta. Entonces, una que otra cosa que voy adquiriendo en conocimiento, pues es impactante. Y al ver ya un proyecto que lo exponen y todo eso, la verdad es que quedo muy impactada. Además que me sorprende mucho el tema de, claro, el manejo de espacios de una persona adulta a diferencia de un niño, pues el manejo emocional es, no me atrevería a decir que es complicado, pero es de más cuidado. Entonces, bueno, la verdad es que he estado muy wow con lo que han presentado y de verdad felicitaciones y muchísimas gracias por compartirlo y explicarlo de tal manera que se logra entender y se logra percibir las emociones también de todo el proceso que han llevado como tal cada una de ustedes.
Creo que el tema está de la edad que has dicho. Birgit, she was focusing on maybe how different is the emotions from adult people and might be more complicated. Well, not complicated, well, different childhood. And also for us, it was complicated as well because childhood, I mean, from 0 to 18 years old, there's a whole world, right?
Yes.
So we had to focus. It was hard. It was hard to focus.
Imagine.
And so yes, because it's, I mean, 7-year-old and a 15-year-old, the development, brain development, physical development, everything is so different. But still, we tried to give this house, to give an opportunity for all of them. So yeah, that was...
sorry. We conclude that the age, no adult, but teenager, more or less, is
exactly teenager.
Is more complicated than the behavior of the adult. Is more complicated. Okay.
But this is interesting because the last Monday, I'm sorry, I got disconnected for like 2 minutes because I had a connection problem. But last month I've been in a conference where there was this very important psychologist in Italy that was talking about he's specialized in adolescents, and he was commenting. I was like freaking because I was saying, "Oh, this is news." He was saying that actually the new generation of adolescents are really much more aware about their emotions and how what they do perceive, and actually the problem is in between the relationship that we have with their parents, because the parents are more fragile than their adolescents. So what the problems he was saying, okay, we always said that the problem is the pandemics and the internet and whatever. The real problem is the relationship with the parents, and the fact that these adolescents, they are very good in recognizing their emotions, and they recognize so well the emotions that when they see their parents' fragility, they try to protect them. So they start behaving like they were emotional illiterate, but it's they pretend to do that in order to protect their parents. That obviously their parents are mostly they are like in between 14 and 15 years old, and they don't have these during their education they didn't have this attention to the emotional part as that our kids are having right now. Well, this is so what I started to think is that actually this space could be useful also for the parents, that are accompanying their kids there.
I was thinking the same, sorry, because I'm like the project that I'm doing now at university also incorporates emotional regulation, and I work with children and ask them about specific emotions and how this connects to space, and they mostly know it much better, and it's much more tangible for them to say, okay, this is what I do when I'm angry, or this is what I do, for example, if I'm sad, than all the adults that I have asked. So I think it's really something that we sort of unlearn in a way. And as Cami said before, if this is the space could be a sort of engraved memory of what this means, I think this could be really helpful for, also in the stage of growing up and keeping that into adulthood.
Estaba preguntando sobre la intervención de Giulietta, y para traducir, Giulietta hablaba de que recientemente fue a una conferencia de un psicólogo que decía que la generación de adolescentes actualmente tiene mucha más autoconsciencia emocional que sus padres. Entonces acaba generando un problema que delante de sus padres perciben la fragilidad y la dificultad emocional de ellos, y entonces quieren como protegerles emocionalmente y van a pretender tener menos emociones o de menor intensidad para protegerles a ellos, ¿no? Cuando tienen capacidad de explorar y experimentar más emociones y gestionarlas, ¿no? Entonces, también quería responder a esto, que creo que primero voy a hacer en inglés y luego en castellano. I think that, Giulietta, what you are pointing towards is the importance of mirroring, because these adolescents, they're mirroring of their parents.
This is what he was commenting, that the problem is that when the parents, they mirror, they put their own emotional part on the adolescents, and they say, okay, let's stop this mirroring. Ciao.
And this importance of mirroring and co-regulation in experiencing and regulating our emotions. So I'm thinking that a big part of the emotional journey of these children in this space, it's not only with the space, but it's also with the other children, because through mirroring, when I'm in the relaxing space, if I see the other children relaxing, then I'm also co-regulating physiologically with the other bodies, not only the physical elements of the space. You know, the bodies, I think they're also so important. And something else that I wanted to say is that I think it's so beautiful to see the awareness that designers in what is exactly the emotional process, because as you're saying, these older generations sometimes don't have that ability of experiencing and regulating their emotions, or the range is way more limited. But now we're trying to understand and teach at the school, but what is an emotion? How do we regulate it? And that in your project, you're centered in the experience of change, that in order to process stress or any emotion, we cannot stay still. We need to go through a journey. Looking for a chapter of Netflix or reading a story is like, or going outside or going to nature, going to the park. We look for a change because space has this power. When you change space, you enter a new experience and then you can transform your emotions. So I think that's just, you know, beautiful awareness that as a system, it's what we can implement everywhere. So maybe sometimes we might not be able to build a fancy space of emotional regulation, but just with the idea that change is important to manage your emotions, I think that already is so much. Y para traducirlo brevemente al español, decía que creo que parte de la experiencia que importa mucho es el espejar, el conectarse con otras personas que están viviendo la misma experiencia. Entonces, que en esta casa de los niños no es solamente el espacio, sino también los otros niños, los otros adolescentes que están ahí, puedes reflejar tus emociones, que es lo que Giulietta comentaba, que a veces falta intergeneracionalmente ese mirroring y espejar. Y que también me parecía muy importante que empecemos a entender que esta gestión emocional pasa en el cambio, ¿no? Que para gestionar el estrés o el malestar necesitas cambiar de espacio o pasar por un cambio emocional, por una experiencia para llegar al otro lado. Es algo que vivimos con el arte, y hacer ejercicio, con ir a la naturaleza, ¿no? Buscamos tener una experiencia porque el cuerpo crea una adaptación a la nueva experiencia y en esa adaptación es donde podemos llegar a un nuevo estado. Y que solo con esa consciencia se puede aplicar de muchísimas maneras, ¿no? Desde construir un espacio muy complejo, muy dedicado, hasta o sea, simplemente entender que cuando las personas están viviendo una emoción pueden necesitar un cambio de espacio y de experiencia.
¿Puedo hacer una pregunta así rápida? O sea que este cambio de roles que se está viviendo es como motivo como de una desvinculación que hay entre padres e hijos, de lo que estamos hablando ahorita, y es importante hacer como que estas conexiones o estos vínculos de nuevo para poder como...
Yo creo que esta desvinculación, y Giulietta, corrígeme si me equivoco, viene de que cuando la emoción de una parte es muy intensa y la otra parte no tiene la capacidad para experimentarla, al encontrarse, esta parte necesita bajar la intensidad de lo que está viendo porque no puede sostenerlo. Entonces,
pero
Perdón. Pero, no, Florencia, go on.
Solo quería decir que, o sea, no puedes tener esta experiencia porque justo no te vinculas, o sea, no tienes esta capacidad porque justo perdiste esta vinculación desde, o sea, como que hemos perdido esta vinculación.
Mira, yo no soy psicóloga, pero lo que el señor decía es que como que cuando el tema es que ellos, los adolescentes, buscan una relación emocional con sus padres. Los padres no están bien preparados en conectar con ellos en este nivel emocional y además lo que intentan hacer es sobreponer sus emociones y como la frase era, tienes que sentirte como tú quieras, pero a mi manera. Es lo que el psicólogo decía, tenemos nosotros como padres dejar de hacer esto, decir al chico, tienes que ser como tú eres, pero a mi manera. Esto no. Cuando el punto es asentarse y escuchar y tratar de entender el estado emocional del chico. Si no, lo que él va a hacer es ir a buscar a alguien otro, someone, otro lugar donde pueda encontrar este espejo emocional. Es esto que decía. Si no conectas, bueno, no voy a gastar tiempo en esto, voy a buscar otro lugar donde puedo conectar con otra gente que me entiende. Bueno, eso es lo que he entendido, ¿eh? No soy psicóloga, me pareció muy interesante.
¿Sabes, Marta? Un poco hablando del journey, que es lo que mencionaste hace un rato. Julie y Clara, no sé si se acuerdan el nombre de esta psicóloga que nos dio esta linda exposición sobre un proyecto que ella tiene en París. Ella trata a los chicos en una movilidad, en una especie de carro, ¿no? Como un van que está
No en París, en
Córcega.
En Córcega.
Una caravana, una caravana.
Es una caravana y esta de aquí está dedicada para hacer como que un consultorio, pero la propuesta que ella hace es que va cambiando de espacios, va avanzando. Entonces, en vez de hacer una consulta con estos niños en un lugar estático, en donde uno no avanza porque justamente no tiene el journey, entonces ella introduce toda la terapia en estas cabanas, como le dicen ustedes.
Caravana, perdona, caravana.
Caravanas ya, en estas caravanas y va cambiando el espacio y va generando una narrativa, va generando un journey que está linkeado con el propósito específico de cada niño. Y de esa forma lo que ella ha ido viendo es cómo el avance es mucho más grande de esta forma que de la otra. Entonces ahí nuevamente se evidencia la influencia del espacio en el tratamiento.
¡Wow! ¡Qué pasada! ¡Qué bonito!
Qué lindo.
Sí.
Lindo fue.
Dicho es one last...
Sorry.
No.
Entiendo mejor lo que dice Marta de esta importancia de las transiciones, o sea, de los cambios de los ambientes para poder trabajar con esto. Solo quería, o sea, como que lo voy entendiendo muy bien.
Y también
como lo van diciendo.
Creo que es también el principio de la homeostasis, ¿no? Tú entiendes maybe I switch to English in order that Birgit understands. The emotion regulation, if you have to train it, you have to change many emotions, no? Because you understand how to regulate. So the point is not the emotion itself in itself, but it's, I think, the process of homeostasis that you recognize when you are rebalancing what is happening to your body, and you at a certain point you learn how to manage it and to do it on purpose.
And Julie,
to self-regulate.
It's great that you're saying this because it's also about allostasis, how you're going to search, how you're seeking for the actions needed so that you can actually regulate yourself in this process.
Sorry, Marta, I don't know if I interrupted you.
That it's really connected to everything that you guys are talking about, that I think also this space makes me think a lot of this importance of agency and autonomy, because when you are feeling bad, you know what you need sometimes. You know the actions that you need to do to release, and you know where you find pleasure, where you find joy. So I think that sometimes we just don't have the availability of the spaces to do these actions and find that regulation. So creating a space where, as an autonomous being, I can go find the little nook in the first place to feel the pleasure. And then when I'm ready, I move into the place for joy. And then when I've really put out those hormones and I'm just like, you know, I've arrived, when I feel I've arrived to that climax, then I'm ready to go to the space of compassion or relaxation. But it's really me as a child or as an adult having the agency to be the master of my process and my journey. And I think that is so key, and that we are not empowered enough, because I think about it many times. Sometimes before transform, empower, because you can go to a hospital and do a big intervention that costs a lot of money, but also you can empower, because if people know, oh wait, I can put art in the walls if I want. I can bring my blanket. I can do, if people know how beautiful this relationship with space is and with objects, and they're more empowered to take the time. I can decide when I go out. I can decide when I go in. I can decide where. I can decide, change the seat, the chair where I sit, and they feel, more agency to do it, then they probably feel more benefits. But there's this politics of space that we've learned to be just sitting, nicely in one spot, not to move. And it's a lot of retraining to be like, no, take space in the space. Go wherever you need and ask for whatever you need so that you can create your own comfort. And I think that this space, the House of Children, allowing all this freedom also helps people learn the importance of this agency and maybe bring it to other places, bring it to their homes, to ask for the things they might need to feel more comfortable.
I wanted to add a point that maybe girls, I don't know if we actually discussed it very much, is that we have to break the stigma of mental health disorders. So this house really has to be, that people don't see this house, this kid, he's not well, what a pity, he's going there. But as a place where, as you said, empower yourself, you go there and break this stigma, so it is a house of welcoming that embraces you and that people actually want to go there. This is the first point. Maybe if it's so stigma, there is society where these healthcare facilities that treat mental health disorders are so stigmatized that it's like, oh wow, no. So try to fight against the negative view of these facilities and just turn it around. And so people want to go there. Kids and children want to go there, and they know it's a safe place and it's a beautiful place.
I love that. Estamos llegando al final. We're reaching the end. So we have just a couple more minutes. If anybody else wants to say something, si alguien quiere decir algo, cerramos ya en unos minutos.
Maybe when you just said that with the stigma, I was thinking of Sylvie Thornton. Do you remember?
That's
the
her.
Psychologist? Yeah.
That's what the one, the French one, Corsica.
Sí.
Okay.
Sí.
Okay, this I didn't understand. Okay. The psychological mobile system that she said. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Ayúdame a traducir, Marta, por favor, porque justo estuve en una conferencia de primera infancia y decía que, o sea, lo importante que era atender las experiencias adversas en la infancia, porque luego se iban a complicar, pues, cuando éramos adultos. Y que todos, lo digo por esto que dice Clara de este estigma que hay, y que todos hemos pasado por experiencias adversas en la vida, que las tenemos que atender en algún momento, porque si no, en algún momento nos van a traer problemas. Digo, lo mejor es que lo soluciones en la niñez, pero que, o sea, entonces no deberíamos de tener este estigma o este complejo, porque creo que para todos es benéfico.
I love what Florencia is saying, and maybe we can close with that, is that she was pointing out that in order to break the stigma, we need to address problems when they happen, which is in childhood. And that the ability to have these spaces can be a great opportunity to treat emotional difficulties in the moment rather than letting them carry on and then sort of become a stigma and an issue in the future. So yes, absolutely. And I love too the focus on children and adolescents, because it is in these crucial developmental stages where all the future emotional dysregulation can be addressed. So thank you so much for this beautiful.
Thank you, all of you, for listening.
Thank you for listening. Exactly.
For inviting us, Marta, and all for patience and feedback also.